This is Infection, the survival podcast, recorded live on Tuesday, February the 22nd, 2022, episode 371. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another edition of Infection, the survival podcast. Infection is your source for the latest information on survival video games. My name is Nick Craig. You can check me out on various social media platforms by visiting my website, nickcraig.net. And if you want to follow me on Truth Social, you can follow me at Nick Craig on Truth Social. Joining me as he does each and every week, from the great state of Idaho. It's not looking like Idaho behind him is Brian.
No, maybe someday. You never know with the way it's going.
Certain individuals keep moving in. It might end up looking like that. Hey, Brian, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. If you want to find me on Gab, Parler, and Getter, currently.
Are you on Truth Social?
Truth Social. I'm not on Truth Social yet.
Got to get on Truth Social, Brian.
I've been getting the 504 error.
Yeah, I keep. Yeah. It took me a while to get on 504 engine X error. Something.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's at Brian Aldridge. Of course, if you want to check out my blog, biteoftech.com. And make sure you go to our website, infectionpodcast.com. And we've got a Discord server where most people communicate. We have, I think, 9 or 10 ARC servers going right now. We've got a news channel. Maybe there's a topic you think we need to cover that we're not covering in the show, or maybe a game's going to be coming up that you think we need to look at. Just go ahead and put that in the news channel, and we will take a look at that before the next show. So that's a good way to get your input into the show right away. If you want to watch the show, you can do that through Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, and DLive. Now, those are live, and they'll be having recordings after the fact. And if you want to listen to the show through the podcast, you got to wait till the show's done, and then we upload a copy of that, and you can listen on whatever device and platform you want to use. There's a lot of different options. Just go to the lower right-hand side, click what is most useful for you, and then if you're going to listen, go to the episode that you're looking at, and we got links, articles, everything that you would need that we refer to throughout the show. We've got them all there, and a player for audio and video if you want to do it right in the website. If you want to support the show, you can do that through the support tab up top. We've got infectionpodcast.com/support. We've got Prime Gaming subs, Humble Bundle, a lot of different ways that people support us, and we just appreciate that. And there you go. I think that's all the self-promotion.
Yes, I appreciate all the support here over the past, it's been a couple of years since we've had the Twitch stuff rolling, so greatly appreciate that. Brian, I want to start off with a story I caught late in the day today, breaking literally less than 2 hours ago over on Bloomberg. It deals with Call of Duty. Now, I don't intend to talk about Call of Duty itself, but this report is now out that Activision is set to delay their 2023 Call of Duty launch. Now, first impression to this is, oh my God, Microsoft, that acquisition hasn't even been completed by the Federal Trade Commission. So this has got nothing to do with Microsoft at all. But, Brian, I think this has to do with something that we have talked about, and something that I was hoping that Microsoft would be able to do with the acquisition of Activision, with the acquisition of Bethesda, is we need to get these games are on too short of development cycles, and we end up getting released $60 hot garbage. And I am hopeful, maybe there's ill will with it, but I am hopeful that maybe this is the start in the right direction. This will be the first time in like 20 years that there has not been a Call of Duty game, that there will not be a Call of Duty game out in November or October of 2023. And I think this is pretty significant for a large developer. I would make the argument the largest video game franchise known. I don't think that's too crazy of a claim or a statement. Everybody knows what a Call of Duty is. What is your initial impression and reaction to this? Are we maybe seeing a correction here?
Yeah, and I think kind of what they've been running into is having a good one and then a bad one. And a lot of it has to do with whether they are coming up with original content or whether or not they're remaking and redoing old content, which requires less thinking. It's more of modernizing, revamping. So I think for these Call of Duties, people are expecting a little bit more with each one, I think they need to take more time, especially if this is something that they've been losing money. I mean, 2024 or whatever, is that Call of Duty, or is that which one 2042? Which was the one that's
Battlefield.
yeah, I mean, that like that one, for instance, there's a good one and there's a bad one. They lose money on one, they make money on another. Call of Duty's the exact same way. They'll have ones that people love. World War II, people hated,
That was terrible.
well, they
Yeah,
kind of liked it
awful.
at first, but then in the end, it was one that people didn't really like. Then the next one, I think it was people like that one.
Yeah,
So it's going to be
Vanguard.
something that I think if you can take a little more time, test these things out a little bit more. Everybody complains about the developers crunch that they're constantly complaining about. I just think that taking a little more time, letting all the developers make it in the way that they envision, quit trying to shove it out by a certain date, because COVID, if anything, has showed them that when a wrench gets into the plans, when you're locked to a date, then all of a sudden you're delivering junk. And I think that's kind of what we've been given, is some of the COVID junk on some of these games, like the Battlefield. Well, it's done, let's put it out. Okay, well, there was a lot of mess up in the last 2 years in development on that, probably because everybody started working remote, and then all of the chaos in
But
the companies that are
but hold
happening.
on. I think you're carrying the water of developers here, Brian, because I'll give you another example. Fallout 76. That game
Yeah.
was out well before COVID, and they, for a year and a half after the game, finally put the finishing touches on it to where it's playable. This has been a trend in the AAA sphere. I mean, look at Cyberpunk 2. It's been over a year, and we just got that big 1.5 patch last week that fixes all of these issues. This has got to stop. The erosion of trust in the gaming community with these large developers. Let me be very clear. $60 is a lot of money. $60 is a lot of money.
70? Isn't it also coming up to 70? Wasn't it that they're going to 70 here pretty soon?
$69.99 for reportedly for new titles on consoles in sometime in the near future. You're talking about a lot of money for somebody to spend to get a half-baked game. Now, when we talk about indie, we talk about small developers. I think there is a level of understanding within the community and understanding within the people buying the game that this is an indie studio, this is an indie dev, this is a couple guys working on a game. I'm not expecting AAA greatness. That's why the game is $25. But when I go to EA, Electronic Arts, who's been making video games for 30 years, and shell out $59 for a new version of Battlefield, which, by the way, they do not release a Battlefield every year. And I buy the new Battlefield, and it is literally unplayable on launch day. There's no excuse. And it's not because it's unplayable because of the server issues. That stuff happens every time a game launches. That's not a problem. But when there are game-breaking bugs in the game because you have either failed to QA it, failed to do QC on it, did not allow enough people into a beta, made too many changes, under too much of a time constraint, Brian, I'm of the real mindset that there is now significant pushback from the gamers, the people that are buying these products. And I don't know if that's why Activision is doing this. But I tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, and I think that's the thing, is the developers, hit all these crunches. They put out the product in probably a less than ideal fashion. They probably cut so many corners just because of all the issues coming up, during COVID, because these take years to develop these games. So games that are getting released right now were being worked on heavily during COVID. So I think we're now seeing the garbage coming out the other end of them not taking the proper time and not wanting to announce, hey, we're delaying a game release by a year so that we can release what we expected to release, even though, there's no excuse for it. But just, these games need more time, because it seems like the development cycle was just a wrench was thrown on it in the middle. And I think that we're going to get a couple of games that come out like this. There's some that have been worked on much before COVID that we're going to be seeing released now. I didn't put them in our show notes, but Mad Max 2. You remember Mad Max, that game I loved that a lot of people didn't like for some reason? They're making another one. It's going to be released here in the next year, 2022, 2023. They haven't talked anything about it. But they've been working on that since way before COVID. So something like that, I expect to still be on par. I expect to not see any big issues. But when it's maybe a game series that they're releasing every 2 years to 3 years, that game is going to have a lot of problems because you've developed it in a less than ideal situation, but you don't feel like you can push it out a year because are on a 3-year release cycle sometimes or 2-year release cycle. I think that's kind of the issue. They need to be willing to say this game will, or keep it silent until you're like, what was it? Blizzard was working on that one game. They kept it silent for how many years of development? And now they're still playtesting it.
Yeah. Their new,
it was like 7 years or something like that. They've been working on that
yeah.
game.
Their new IP that they're working on. So
yeah,
I don't want to spend the entire show on this, but I think, Activision is a publicly traded company. This is going to be a major blow for their financials in 2023. They're not going to have a new Call of Duty game. So there is now nobody has an excuse. If Activision Blizzard, one of the largest game development studios and publishers in the world, which was, by the way, just acquired, is in the process of being acquired for $70 million. If they can delay a game by a year, then EA has no excuse. Bethesda has no excuse. Ubisoft has no excuse. Nobody. CD Projekt Red, nobody has an excuse not to delay a game for financials. If Activision can do it, you can do it too. So I'm hopeful that this is a trend that now that it is, and we'll see if it, if it plummets Activision, which it won't, but if it does, maybe you'll see the other. I think this will overall be a good thing because Call of Duty Vanguard has failed to meet sales expectations. The game is just not very good. I played it a little bit. It's fine. It's another Call of Duty game, but I would much rather, and I've spent more time playing the previous Call of Duty than Vanguard. So this is the first time since 2005. 2023 will be the first time since 2005 that Activision has not released a Call of Duty game. Pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and I think it'll be for the best. I think that we're getting to a point now where they're realizing the loss and just putting out things that don't meet expectation. They're losing so much that they're no longer making back, I think, over time because they're expected to release games so quickly. People move on much more quickly than they used to. If they don't think a game is good, they're moving on to the next game or they're playing an older one. You really didn't always have that option a long time ago. Everybody would move on. I think now everybody, if it's bad, they quit holding on to it for so long and they just go back to the previous one. And we're seeing that in some of the newer releases coming out where one will be, consistent. The other one gets nobody. It just is dead because people don't want to play it. So I think it's not like it used to be. And they're going to have to adapt because it's hard for them to wind down a game that's supposed to be available to people for a certain amount of time, have people actually playing to where you can log into a server and queue up. If nobody's playing the game, that game's pretty much dead. You shouldn't even be able to sell it, if you can't get a queue because, the person's not getting what they're paying for. And they have games like that where the lobbies are just almost dead, at least like with the Battlefield.
Yeah.
So I think that's their biggest, they need to take time and make sure that their releases are actually hits, make sure they're unique, make sure that people play test it and it actually fits the feel that people expect in a Call of Duty game. And I think that's the big difference.
Precisely. So
when they try to get away from that and it kills them.
I was pleasantly surprised to see that on Twitter a little bit earlier. The full article is on Bloomberg.com. We'll have a link to it in our show notes, infectionpodcast.com. Brian, I do want to talk about Bethesda real quick. They were, in fact, completely acquired and purchased by Microsoft. Yep. That is done, and they are now one with Microsoft. And they have announced, I wish I had a cheer sound effect, that they are dropping the Bethesda Launcher, and they are going to be returning their player base to Steam, which shows two things to me. First, that it's good that we always bitched and complained about having 1,000 launchers to play games.
Yep.
But secondly, that they're not pushing this to the Microsoft store. They're pushing this back to Steam, which I think shows Microsoft's commitment to not just trying to round up everybody into a unified ecosystem, but understanding and realizing that Steam is the place for PC gaming and trying to funnel people there instead of the Microsoft store. That to me is more remarkable than anything else.
Yeah, they're kind of following the industry standards. I mean, of what we expect. Not, the industry standards kind of gone out the window in some areas.
Yeah.
And the standards, I guess, have changed to things that we don't appreciate. But I think some of these they're kind of sticking to it. So I think this is a good thing because a lot of people would complain if they moved it to a Microsoft Store purchase, especially if they want to have the ability to kind of move this license around. Uh, People expect Steam, so this is good for them, to do for the user. I think also they're really pushing the Game Pass. That seems to be the thing that they push. They don't seem to be pushing so much for people to push their purchases yet. I don't think they feel like, because remember, they're kind of revamping all that. They're still in the process of redoing the store, making it a much better interface. I don't think they're really wanting to push people there till they feel like they're delivering that interface. Because I don't see leaks going to it. I don't see them trying to pop up their store in your face on Windows very often. I think that's going to come later. But for now, for these, because when people purchase this on other platforms, they weren't expecting to purchase it maybe through Microsoft. Because some of these licenses kind of move around, and they allowed me to transfer Destiny 2 from, I think it was on this launcher. Was that the one this was? Or no, that was the
No.
Battle.net. So that was on Battle.net, but it'd be kind of a similar process. Battle.net,
yeah.
when they moved all of the Destiny 2 purchases out, and you were able to pick where you wanted that to transfer. I think they could have probably done that too, but this is kind of just a do it once and it's all done.
Yeah. So solid dates have not been announced yet, but users with games on Bethesda's launcher will be able to transfer them to Steam beginning sometime in early April. Yep. The instructions have not been released yet. The cool part, too, is saved game data is also going to be transferred.
Good.
Including one exception for unexplained reasons, Wolfenstein Youngblood. It must be something with that. Some will require manual transfers, but they'll have details on how to do all of that. So very interesting. Not surprising that they're shutting down the Battle.net not that they're shutting down the Bethesda Net launcher, but that they are not pushing people to Microsoft, the Microsoft Store or the Xbox Marketplace. They've got a calamity in terms of naming. I don't know what to call Microsoft gaming on PC. Is it called Xbox? Is it? They changed it from
Xbox
PC.
Xbox PC.
Yeah, which I think is confusing. It is confusing.
Or wait, no, it's a Game Pass PC. That's what they call it.
They call it Game Pass PC, but they call it the Xbox app. You play games through the Xbox app, so it's a little confusing as to what that is. But I'm surprised that they're not pushing people towards that, and instead pushing them towards Steam, which I have said early on. Until I'm proven wrong, I think Microsoft acquiring these companies is probably a good thing. They're kind of proving my point here, Brian, by not trying to shoehorn people into using, because some people just don't want to use the Microsoft crap. If you don't want to if you don't want Game Pass, if you don't want Halo, or actually you can play Halo on Steam, but if you don't want these games, you don't have to use it. And Microsoft is allowing people that have Fallout and everything else to do that. So interesting to see.
And what about Battle.net? Because I think that'll be the next one that we see. What do they do with that? Because that one has the WoW in it. That one has StarCraft. I don't think they'll do Diablos.
I don't think.
But if they get their Windows PC app up to par, where they're kind of presenting the games in the way that they want, which is because it's not built to do that in the current Xbox or PC app store that they have on there. It's just not. It's not like what the rest of their stores are like. And so I think once they get that switched over, I think then they might, because they can provide that interface and market it.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one, but because of all of the legacy games and everything, I would not be surprised if they leave Battle.net alone. Battle.net's been out since what, the early 90s? I mean, it was one of the first, if not the first, like successful game launchers with Warcraft and StarCraft and Diablo. I wouldn't be surprised if they leave Battle.net alone just because of what it is, and it's very different than the Microsoft Store. The Bethesda Launcher, let's be perfectly honest, I don't know how many people were using it. I'm sure many people were not. I would love to see how many active users they've got using it. Not people signed in, people actually playing games on it. Because Fallout 76 is already on Steam. So unless you are an idiot like me and bought the game on Bethesda Net at the beginning, because I'm a moron, I can't imagine they had much user base anyway. On the flip side, Battle.net has got a whole boatload of users between World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, Diablo, Destiny. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that are all on that launcher. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yep. Hey, I wanted to talk about something else that we've been kind of talking about.
Sure.
I saw an article on Windows Central, and it says, thanks to PC Game Pass, I'll probably never buy an Xbox again. And that's kind of what we've been discussing a little bit over the last couple of months, is how I think Microsoft is making it where Xbox is now not really the Xbox. It's not the device. Like their whole environment, the Game Pass and the games that they provide, which they now can provide to you with the equivalent of an emulator or a virtual environment type of a thing streaming to you. Uh, I don't see how they even really need an Xbox anymore once they get that to be seamless with the streaming. And I thought this is really what they're seeing, what we're talking about, where they don't really need those devices anymore. Just like you don't need a big DVD player to watch a movie, you can have a little box that's this big, a Roku or something, and you get the full experience. Even better now than what you got with a box sitting at your house. Truly. Now you can get it better than what you can get from off the counter. So I think that this is where gaming's going as well, and I think it's going to be just as big of a change where we're getting better games streaming than we can get on a local device because of what the technologies they use to do it and the database, connectivity they can do locally that they can't do. I just think it's going to be better, and we're going to look back and say, well, I wouldn't want to run it on a device here because it would lose that. It wouldn't be the same kind of game. I think we're waiting for those games. That's what I keep feeling. I'm saying, where are the games that actually use technology nowadays? It's all, they're doing a lot of the same type of stuff on the back end that they've always done for the last 10, 15 years. I don't feel like they're really truly embracing, and we keep seeing games promising it. Mavericks, remember that one? Promising using all these cool new technology to do these big things, and we're not getting it. I think it's going to come down to something that's actually being streamed to you, where there's some cool technology happening on the back end that we can't rely on to use over an internet connection and deal with the hacking and have all that data coming at you over a home internet connection. I just think that that's going to be the change, is we have something that looks so cool and is so amazing that they can't pull it on a local device. I think that at that point, local devices are done. People will be moved on because they will never get that same experience again, especially with these big things where they're talking about making metaverses and huge environments with tons of things. There's going to be a limit to how much you can do on a local computer. It's just, you're going to kill it, or a local device like an Xbox. You can't do it. And so I think that's going to be the thing that they're going to overcome, because they're going to try to make these games so big that you just won't be able to do it in a normal online session anymore. And I think that's where we're going. And I think that this streaming and having everything be to where it's not really on the Xbox, or maybe it's streamed, and you're just seeing the screen and you're giving inputs. I think that's what's going to bring it on, because they're going to finally be able to provide you those cool things.
I agree.
And everybody will have the same experience too.
They will. A quick anecdote. I did actually, Brian, for the first time in years, turn on my Xbox. Is it called the Xbox One? This past weekend, and played a game, but it's not what you would think. It does have backwards compatibility to the Xbox 360, and I played Call of Duty Black Ops, which came out in 2009 through the emulator.
Nice.
And played some split screen Call of Duty Nazi Zombies with a buddy of mine. So it took like 3 hours to do all of the updates that I was missing because it's been off and not connected to the internet. But it came right back on. And I did want to ask you this. So I've got PC Game Pass. Mm-hmm. And when I turn on and it's linked to the same Microsoft account that I use on my Xbox, do I also have the Xbox Game Pass too? Because it looked like I did. I didn't. I couldn't tell.
Do you pay for the Ultimate or whatever? I know mine's bundled in with both, but I pay for the Ultimate, which gives me some extra things.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to look deeper into it, but I just saw it interesting because when it logged in, it showed me all these games, and it said like play now, and I was like,
yeah, that's it. You can stream them right to those are the like Xbox games even that you can stream right to your PC and play them instantly without having to do any install, and it's instant. And the quality level is right there. I don't know that you would, unless you're playing a super fast game where you have Twitch responses where you're moving it really fast back and forth. Certain type of games I could see where maybe you would see not the best experience. But I think for most games that people play, the most types of games that people play, I think that having that streaming experience is almost identical to they probably wouldn't be able to tell if you didn't tell them that it was doing that
Yeah,
for the experience I've had.
I'm trying to see what version I have. The Microsoft app is not very good at telling me what subscription I have. But yeah, I thought that was interesting, and I hadn't seen that prior. But yeah, this article over on Windows Central is pretty good, and you're right, Brian. This is something that you've been beating the drum on for literally years now.
I mean, it's going there.
And let's be perfectly honest. Hardware has always been a losing industry for these companies. They're very expensive to make.
They're not attached to it.
Yeah, they're expensive to make. They're obsolete the day that they come out. It's just hardware is very tough, and SaaS, software as a service, which I'll consider games as part of SaaS. You've seen that kind of change in the. It's interesting because, Brian, you worked in technology for a long time.
Yeah.
Everything used to be proprietary in box. You wanted to have a mail system for your company. You would purchase an appliance from a company. It was your mail server. You put it in your rack. You want some sort of internal DNS or something like that. You purchase an appliance from a company. You plop it in your box. You want a firewall, something for email. You buy a Barracuda spam box. You put it in your rack. And in the technology industry, the IT world, the change to SaaS started happening probably about a decade ago. In the early 2010s, you started seeing the push away from here's a physical appliance that you put in your industry to, hey, we can offer you this many seats at this many costs per licenses, whatever. And it's been very lucrative for the tech industries.
Microsoft did that early too, because they started really pushing to these subscription services with Office 360 or whatever's Office 365, whatever they called it. That they started with that as a subscription, trying to get people away from these one-time license purchases that they would then sit and be on the same version of Microsoft Office for 5 to 10 years.
It wasn't even Office; it was the premise Exchange servers that you'd be running on Windows Server 2003. And while
that really pushed the change. That was such a pain to manage to manage a mail server on a Microsoft platform. You're either using Domino server back in the day or Microsoft Exchange. Both of them, you couldn't just update the servers because it would most likely cause a big issue. You'd get corrupt profiles, big issues. So what you usually do is create a whole new server, migrate all your profiles over to it, and then turn it on, and now that's your new email server. Now, of course, everything doesn't come across exactly how you want it to, so you have to go through and redo all these profiles. It was such a pain to do upgrades for servers back in the day. Coming to doing a platform as a service or a software as a service, it's so much better because they can turn around and do all that work, especially when you get into trying to have it to where you're not put on spam lists for your IP address, all these things that these small businesses don't want to deal with, but it's costing them thousands and thousands of dollars in hardware, licensing costs, and everything else. I think it just makes such a big difference, doing it this way because they're not having to pitch out tons of money for hardware and still have to pay for all that licensing, and they get a better service. I think Microsoft tackled that early with their email platform that they have, and now they kind of dominate. People are kind of getting away from Google, I think, a little bit.
In a business sense, absolutely.
Yeah.
People are not using Gmail.
People have been flocking to Microsoft because one thing that's really cool, I mean, not that we're talking tech, one thing that's really cool when you're subscribed to Microsoft Office, what you can do is you can use it as a login, or the Office 365
active
service.
domain.
You now can use that as a login, as active domain for, let's say, your laptop. And you can use that to authenticate and have some sort of permission system, if you're encrypting your drive. Cool things like that they, as the operating system creator, have the ability to control and make happen. And, and they've really just made that go leaps and bounds beyond and made it so you're not tied to a physical service hardware device, just like they've done with the Xboxes. And now it's in the cloud and you don't need anything in your house other than to log in. I think that's where they're going exact same way with the Xboxes.
And that was precisely my point of bringing this up, as we saw this in the technology field, over the last decade. And now gaming is getting to the point where it's, I think, going to be pretty similar because it's good for, at least on the business side, it's good for both customers. And and translating that to the gaming side, looking at the business side of it with this, you don't have to pay an intern, which sucks for internal IT people. You can fire your IT guy when you move all of your stuff to the cloud, or at least not get rid of half of your IT department. So that sucks. But
it gets backed up automatically. It's more reliable. Most people always fail.
Your upfront costs are a lot low. Long term, it does cost more. Obviously, $15 a month or whatever it is if you buy bulk. But
depending on how many
people
users you had, it might be a better deal, because a lot of people were pitching out so much for hardware and their licensing for the operating system of the server, and then their exchange licensing, and then their number of people licensing. Their whole licensing system was a joke.
Well, it was expensive,
and because I think this is a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about you want to spin up a mail server for 150 people. You're dropping 15-20 grand on the server hardware, the server, the Microsoft server license, the exchange licenses, the seats. I mean, you're talking about a very expensive thing, and now I think we're going to see the same thing on the gaming side. So that's why I brought that up. Sorry to derail the conversation.
And it's a low cost. It's a consistent cost for the user. They don't have to pitch out a big chunk of money, which is the equivalent of what businesses were doing with the old exchange, and businesses were gladly to stop doing that. And I think that the console users are now going to gladly be like, oh, I don't have to pay $600 or more for a console. And you still get the exact same experience. What are you not getting other than being able to play offline? That is the one thing that I will say that you do lose. Just like when your internet's down and you don't have Netflix, right? That people are going to have to learn to adjust to that. And I think that that's just going to be an acceptable loss at that point.
Yeah, and I do think
have other devices to do it, phones, everything else.
Yeah, and that is something that is a nut that will have to be cracked. Obviously, there's no way to track who's playing games offline because they are offline. But I wonder how many people that actually affects. I don't know.
I think that there's less and less now.
Yeah, it is absolutely, especially with Starlink and other things now becoming more and more readily available for people. In terms of high-speed internet. I mean, we've got a buddy of ours, UGX Vibe, who not only just games, but plays competitive first-person shooters on Starlink and is as good, if not better, than other people that are playing on fiber and or cable DOCSIS coax connections. So I think those days are slowly weaning away. And again, you make a good point, Brian. If you don't have an internet connection or you don't have a consistent internet connection, you are very much in the fringe because you're not doing Netflix. You're not using any of these streaming services. And there's plenty of people that just still have cable television or DirecTV or whatever and do that. And that's not going to be for everybody, but that's maybe when a device like the Steam Deck makes more sense, where you download the things, or the Nintendo Switch. Or maybe you see Microsoft making a $200 console, Brian, that will run games all right that you download.
Really lightweight,
that you can still download. It's not a Roku, it's not an Apple TV. It's still a quote unquote console, but it's with the mindset that most people are going to be streaming their games. But if you do, if you're going to take it out on the road, or you're going to take it, or you're dealing with a situation where you don't have consistent internet, you can still do that stuff too. Maybe it'll downscale or whatever. There are solutions here for, I think, what is as you mentioned, an ever-shrinking pool of individuals that are really hell-bent on offline play. So it's very interesting.
And I think when they fully get to this kind of a platform as a service where a huge percentage of their user base is using the subscription and not really relying on discs and things like we see with the old consoles, I think that's when we're really going to start seeing this change, and they're going to start locking down and maybe cutting out some of the old people the way that they did it. Make it to where there's another device that you get that, as you said, provides you with the ability to play some Xbox 360 games. Maybe it has some of the older ability to play offline, a lighter weight thing. It could be even something with a screen built into it, like but then you can dock it to your computer. I think there's a lot of possibilities once they get to where they can have lighter weight devices doing this. I think it opens the possibilities, just like we're starting to see with Steam. Steam's getting it to where they can do cool things on a little device. Microsoft, I have a feeling, will do the exact same thing, because if they can stream everything, what's the difference, right? If it's a device that you're using on the internet all the time, then I think that they can provide you with a really cool experience on a small little device that's lightweight, that feels like it's the exact same experience as an Xbox console, but it's small. But then you can dock it to the computer and you're streaming stuff, and it just feels like a normal Xbox. Or you
Agreed.
dock it to the TV. I think that's kind of where we're going, and I think that cool things like that are the next phase. The problem is when people hold on to all these old technologies and everything always has to be backwards compatible. I think Microsoft fixed that. They made everything in the cloud backwards compatible. All these old Xbox 360 games are all in the cloud and they all work. So there's no, you're not losing any games by moving on. They brought them all in. Sony hasn't been able to do that. These other consoles haven't been able to do that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, it's not really backwards compatibility, but speaking of trying to play different games in different platforms, caught this article, Brian. Valve is testing native Linux ports for the Steam Decks in addition to Proton. Now, I believe everything that is running on the Steam Deck right now is running through Proton, whether it's a Linux game or not. But now it looks like they're going to start looking at native Linux versions, which will have potentially better. There's not many AAA games that
it'll use the hardware better. They can make the drivers and have it use existing drivers better. I think it makes less work. If someone's made a game for Linux, run it in Linux. You know what I'm saying? Don't make it do a Windows emulation.
I struggle to bring up graphics because most games that are running on Linux are games like Unturned and Team Fortress 2 and games like that are older. So you're not getting your Cyberpunk or your Red Dead Redemption or your GTA on.
But like Borderlands 2, they put on there. I mean, it's not super intensive.
What I think though is, and it's not in this article, but this is what I thought reading through the story, is a game running natively on the platform in Linux versus running, and Proton's not really an emulator, but it kind of is battery life and performance, Brian. If it does not have to do some sort of emulation or whatever Proton does, which I'm going to be honest, I don't know how it works. I have a suspicion you'll not only get better performance, but you'll get significantly better battery life because the system is not having to emulate something for the game to work. So this could be big, and this might cause developers to say, how do we separate ourselves from everybody else that's in the sphere? Well, hey, a competitor's game will get you 2.5 hours of battery life, but because our game's got native Linux support, maybe it's 5 hours, which is
and they'll start pushing the native. It's a native app or native game, native game to the device. And I think because one thing you got to think about, if this device is supposed to go in sleep mode, it's supposed to still be monitoring and running this Proton service to make sure it's not receiving something saying it needs to wake up. It still has to stay enough awake to receive information from Proton. It can't really truly go down to a hardware level monitoring of buttons and things like that, because it has to be ready to receive a notification from Proton. It's an application running on top of the hardware level. That I think will bring issues, and that's probably what they really would want to get. They'll have performance improvements and things like that, but I bet you there's things that they just can't quite do right, and they can't quite feel seamless, because they're running an application on top of Linux. It's kind of doing that weird emulation thing. They can't quite shut it down and just rely on Linux waking it up. So I think that probably would have a big issue.
Yeah, Proton is essentially a layer that sits over the OS to do some of this emulation for things like that. And it's even noted,
which means it has to stay there running. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's noted that Portal 2, which is a Valve game that has Linux support that came out in 2014, as of right now, Valve is recommending running it on Proton because they haven't done this testing. So now that the device is getting out and people are getting their hands on it, again, it's a small set of games that have that. But this looks good. This looks like it could not only be good for the game experience, but significantly better for battery life and performance of the device, which is still going to be the big question. Are you going to be able to? The Switch does that really well. The battery life on the Switch is phenomenal. You can now, obviously, the games are not anywhere near as intensive as they are on the Steam Deck. But that's, what was the problem with laptops for the longest time, Brian? Gaming laptops. They don't have any
battery. They're huge, or the batteries would die fast.
Terrible. I mean, and obviously that comes with the territory, but you're going to lug around a device and have to constantly find a wall to sit next to or a wall to plug it into. At that point,
Yep.
just carry around an Ultrabook and call it a day. I mean, you're essentially in the same boat.
But
Interesting
one
to
thing
see.
I do think is, as they get to where people are actually gaming on mobile devices, I think that's where streaming is going to come in even more, because what eats battery life when you're playing a game on your phone? The
The app.
graphic cards and things like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it
Yeah.
rendering
The APU. Yeah.
3D and doing all that uses a lot of your battery. That is just eating up battery, because it's heating your phone up. It causes a lot of issues. If you're streaming a game, it's not having to, like, they're sending it to you in the resolution and format you're needed
Yeah.
to
Compressed.
view it without any re-encoding. It's perfectly capsuled for you, right? It's the minimal amount of resource usage, other than the internet connection, which is not really that. Usually you're doing that constantly anyways, even if you're playing it locally. And I think that is going to be, I think it's better. And so uh, we'll see as they start to move to this and get to where there's hardware level support. I think that they're going to really have expectations of this thing's going to last for hours,
Mm.
and they're going to have to figure out how to make that happen on some of these really intensive games that use crazy 3D graphics, like trying to play GTA 5 on it. Is that going to kill your battery life because of all the stuff they're running and then the 3D rendering graphics?
All the
Or are you going to get about
AI
the
in the
same?
background that's working.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of those things. Yeah. Very
All
true.
the extra stuff that's happening is causing your CPU to get hotter, your graphics card to work more, which consumes more battery life, because it
Yeah.
has to run the fans faster to cool it down. Everything consumes battery life. If you can get away from having to generate all that heat and consume all that power, the thing will last a lot longer. It'll stay a lot cooler. And I think you'll have a much better experience. But man, running things locally, that's where they're going to hit those headaches every time. So
Yeah.
I think that'll be a continuing thing as the industry kind of transitions, because that's what it's kind of doing right now. We're transitioning from this, you plug into a TV and this is your experience, to this, I could probably play Xbox anywhere, like, a device on the go. It doesn't matter, and still getting a pretty cool experience with it. So I
Yeah.
think that'll be the new expectation.
Yes, sir. All right. I've hijacked enough of your show notes here, Brian. Lead us.
Hey, do you want to talk about Unreal Engine 5 here for a minute? Because
Sure. Let's do
they
it.
released the preview, and there's a few things in there that I thought were pretty interesting. Um, and I think that'll make a difference in some coming games that we've seen that are going to be released for Unreal Engine 5.
Sure.
So, first of all, rendering, this is in preview access. So means that they've gotten rid of a lot of the bugs. They've fixed a lot of performance issues. This is going to now be rolling out on demo games that you see, and you'll start seeing them in previews. So Nanite is the new virtualized geometry system that they use, that really allows very complex objects to be rendered and still do it very fast. Lumen is now included in this, and they feel like it's fairly ready. One thing that they added is these. They're adding the ability to make huge worlds in this. That's with the world building. They have a world partition system. It's kind of a little bit farther down. This is a change at the engine level. Right there, yes. This is a change at the engine level that I think is going to be huge, because you'll be able to make these giant worlds without having to do weird tricks. Because we haven't seen a lot of MMO style games on Unreal Engine up to this point, because it's very difficult to render a very large world and have it be seamless inside of Unreal Engine and still maintain all this detail. Now they're allowing you to just make gigantic worlds, and it's all native. It'll stream and do all these things without having to do little tricks in the world, like with the large world coordinate system. You're not piecing together a bunch; it actually tracks the whole world at once. There's just so many improvements in this version. I'm excited to start seeing these games, because it's good. They're making it a lot easier for developers of small projects to make these things. But I'm excited for when you start seeing these AAA studios using Unreal Engine 5 and putting out their products, because they usually can take something and just squeeze the most out of it. And I think that we've just seen demos and little examples of it, but we haven't seen a real game made. Just like I feel like I haven't seen a real game made for my Xbox that I have sitting over there yet. It's just I haven't seen a game on it that feels like it's next gen to me. Here, this is what I think is going to bring us that next gen feel. Having games that are released in Unreal Engine 5 with just incredible graphics that then we'll play on our Xboxes, and then we'll say, okay, that's what I've been waiting for. But I think we've been waiting for the engine that actually displays something in what we consider next gen. I don't think we really have a next gen engine. I think this is it. This is at least one of the first ones, because Unity hasn't really changed that much, right? In comparison to this. And it's who knows what's happened to some of the engines. They haven't had releases of new versions or talked about new features in new versions for a long time.
I think I can tell you what's going on with Unity a little bit. Brian, I will admit, and I don't say this proudly, I have been playing a mobile game, which is something. Now, it is a very stupid mobile game. It's one of those connect the dots and things like old school Bejeweled. And I've been playing it more than I'd like to admit. I just loaded it up here. I'm on level 242. Now I will say I'm not spending any money on this game, but it's one of these.
Okay, good.
let me see if I can show the screen here. It's one of these style of games where you connect connect all the things. Yeah. That's on Unity, and because I started playing this. I'm sorry, PH. I know it's cringe, but I got 6 minutes commercial breaks during the show, so it's just something to keep me active during that.
You gotta have something you can fit in there without.
Yeah, and I play before I go. Nevertheless, I'm retarded. I understand. With that aside, I started because there's all these ads for all of these other games in here. So I haven't played any of the other ones, but I've started looking at all of these games. All of them are built on Unity, Brian. All of them.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, and I started doing a little bit of research this past week, not a lot, but I started looking into it. And it seems to me that Unity is, if you are going to make a game, a cross-platform game, you'd be an idiot not to build it on Unity.
Especially if it's mobile, because mobile.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, mobile game. Unreal doesn't have a mobile share at all. Well, that's not necessarily true, because I know Fortnite runs on mobile, so there's some engine there. There's some version of the engine.
They have the ability to render and to do it, but people just have used Unity to do mobile games for the most part.
And and again, say what you want about mobile gaming, but it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So obviously Unity is still doing their stuff on the PC side, but Brian, I wouldn't be surprised if they're seeing and watching what Unreal's doing and saying, all right, let's be honest, we can't compete with this.
Yeah.
But we can own this space. And it appears that they're doing that because all of these similar style games all are on Unity. And the other interesting thing to note too is as you play these games, because they're free, there's ads in there. All of them at the bottom of the ad say Unity ad marketer, Unity ads, meaning
they're probably
Unity is getting
doing
a piece of the pie with those ads. So it seems to me that Unity,
people don't accept so much in desktop games.
You don't accept it in a desktop game. No.
People don't want to see an ad pop up.
Well, not if I'm spending $60 on it. So they can get away with so
much more on a mobile platform. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's them using their strength. I think that we will see to where pretty much Unreal Engine is just considered the desktop platform. Unity still, there's plenty of games on Unity.
Oh, plenty. Rust
it'd be
is
interesting
a great
to see.
Example.
It'll be interesting to see if they kind of gravitate towards more of, hey, we're a mobile device platform, because they make so much money. There's so much money in mobile games. It's amazing compared to PC games. Just there's a lot more people that are willing to pitch out money on a mobile game when they won't consider pitching out money on a PC game.
Here's an article from February the 3rd, my birthday, funny enough. Unity beats expectations with quarter 4 revenues of $315.9 million, up 43%. The company's stock rose 16%, trading at $106 a share. See if I can find. Unity says that it has expanded its total availability market for $45 billion, up from where it was at $29 billion in 2020. They claim that there's the demand for real-time 3D gaming experience, and they, skimming through it, they don't mention anything about mobile, I don't think, particularly. They just mentioned here that Unity expanded its market share lead over rival Epic Games in the mobile gaming market. So
Yeah.
They beat their quarter four expectations and had a revenue of $316 million. So obviously they've got their pretty good, very good. And they're doing that stuff there. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I think that for them, because it's just easier the way their interface works, just to make a very simple 2D base, because that's really what it is for the most part, 2D based games. It's just so much easier to do it. Unreal Engine is made with a 3D in mind.
Of the top 1,000 titles on phone marketplaces, 71% of them use Unity.
Yeah. Yep. It's just it is easier.
I've
always been told I've not tried to seriously program in it, but I've heard that it is.
They've got a user base of 2.7 billion people. So honestly, looking at what Unreal is doing so well, why would you try to compete with that when you are essentially you own 71% of the mobile gaming market of the top 1,000 games? Why would you try to? That doesn't mean allow Unreal to just run amok and do whatever the hell they want. Because again, plenty of games still use Unity on the PC side, but they're not going to compete with this world building. They're not going to compete with the graphic things that UE5 is doing with AI and everything else. But they don't have to, because their main bread and butter, I would guess, is mobile right now.
And they risk mobile. If they try to keep up with Unreal Engine, they risk messing up their prime moneymaker. Because if they go through too crazy trying to make everything work super great 3D, looks awesome on a computer or on a console, and they make it to where the experience isn't as good for a mobile player, they risk sabotaging everything. All their success and what's bringing them so much money now would possibly be damaged. So I think they need to play it safe, especially making sure that it always works perfectly well on a mobile, that it's easy to edit in the 2D. They can't push to make it difficult in 3D. That's where they need to be careful. And I think they have been careful, because they really are pushing mobile still. You could still make a game fully on a console or PC, platform, but man, mobile for them, I think, is just what people automatically go to, because all the tools are there. They have a huge store, lots of examples.
And here is just some of the things that they offer. I mentioned the Unity Ads Network, build servers to do the compiling, multiplayer, if there's a leaderboard or a marketplace, voice chat, cloud content delivery, a CDN, game simulation. I mean, they are owning this space, and which I think is great.
And they're making it kind of a modular system. They're making it to where it's a plug-in type of system, making it more easy for a user to say, all right, I'm not using that feature, I'm going to turn it off. And then it takes away from the size and complexity of your game, making it an easier, less bug prone application. And so they're really starting to tune it, but they're tuning it so that you can prune it down, which I still think kind of leans into mobile, because mobile, you have to prune it down as much as possible to make sure that you can fit it into the smallest size possible, and it's as compatible as it possibly can be with everything. Because if you're not needing certain types of sound, or you need a more basic type of a thing to work on a mobile device, you probably could disable a more advanced sound system and then plug in a simple system. Unreal Engine does kind of the same thing. They're starting, and they've been doing that, but everything is made with, we need it to look the coolest, look the best, and be able to do huge worlds. That's what they're going for. They have struggled with the huge worlds, but I think that's the direction they're going. They want to be where MMOs are made, where, real huge giant worlds that just look picture perfect. That's where Unreal wants to go. I've never seen Unity pushing for that, or even hint that that's what they are. They've always looked different. You can tell usually, oh, that's a Unity game. There's only been a few that have come out that were like, oh, that's a Unity game, like Rust, right? Rust is one that at first I didn't think it was a Unity game. The rendering doesn't look anything, but they rewrote it all themselves. So that's a unique case.
Yeah, they essentially rebuilt the engine for they use the engine as the framework for it. So interesting conversation for sure.
Yes. Hey, there's that Silent Hill remake under Unreal Engine 5. Do you want to show that really quick and just kind of see some of the technologies that they show in this? Because this is one, I just mainly put it in there so we can see, well, what is Unreal Engine 5 looking like right now? And here's an example of that.
All right, let's watch a couple minutes. Ooh, fancy. Look at that.
Another nice new logo. And this is a fan remake, so this shows you what a normal person is able to do, not
This
just a
is-
studio.
This is gameplay footage, not rendered footage.
Yes, yeah, and they're remaking Silent Hill, and they're doing it in Unreal Engine 5, and it makes it so much easier to do it nowadays. You can get to something like this pretty quickly. You see, it's using all the effects, the wind effects.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute the audio and
like
just
a fabric
scrub.
effect.
I'm gonna mute the audio and just scrub through this to see a couple of the different elements. It's got the same Silent Hill camera angles and things like that from the Silent Hill series.
They're going for a remake, so they want it to
Yeah.
feel, like that. But
with that
you know,
terrible
run.
PS2 camera that was such a pain in the ass to
You love
deal
how
with.
they're showing you. They're showing you that it's exactly like you remember.
Yeah.
You know.
Ugh, the worst. Trying to deal with the PS2 camera was awful. Yeah,
But
I mean,
it's just the tools. I mean, for someone to make the equivalent of a game that a studio made, years ago with tons of people, being able to throw that together in a modern engine shows you how much development has changed. You can have a small group of people just make amazing things nowadays. And I'm excited to see it because Unreal Engine 5 or Unreal Engine in general has just been making it easier and easier and easier.
yeah, very much pushing that industry forward for sure.
Yeah. And that was using all the latest technologies to render all those things. So the thing runs super lightweight.
Yeah.
And so when they remake a game like that, it's barely using the CPU. That's how you get a game like that, run them on a mobile device. They could export that out, and that would probably run on a mobile device just fine.
Yeah, interesting.
And it would look just like the original game.
I'm curious to see who will be the big first that will make the big AAA. Not obviously, you're not Call of Duty; those guys aren't going to move towards it. But a really big title using Unreal Engine 5.
Yeah.
Obviously,
what
Fortnite
I'm waiting
has
for.
it and all that, but I'm talking
We've
about
seen some that kind of hinted at it, right? We've seen ones that are they're saying coming soon. Even some of those, I don't those aren't AAA. They're kind of doing cool looking videos
it's
and
cool
all that.
tech.
I'm still waiting. Yeah, I'm still waiting for a true AAA to use that engine for everything it's got. And we haven't seen it. Maybe Arc 2, because you saw that video for Arc 2. You could tell they're really going to go for that super high resolution video. Arc 2, I think, will be one of the early ones using a lot of the engine.
Yes, sir. All right, we got a couple minutes left.
You have
Brian.
a preference?
No, we got a couple minutes left. Is there anything you want to get to?
Well, let's talk about Google here really quick, because Google's doing a change to their privacy issues, which will affect, I think, gaming a little bit. But what they're doing is they're kind of blocking that Facebook business model of collecting a bunch of information to sell it to consumer, to sell the information of consumers to companies and to marketing agencies. So Apple kind of did the same thing.
Apple did do this,
because Apple did something very, very similar, but they're trying to limit the sharing of user data with third parties and really restricting down the amount of data that's collected across all these different applications. Because Facebook, is one of them where they're just gathering as much as they can off your phone to know as much about you as you'll possibly give them access to.
Well, they can take, they essentially put a cookie on your device and they track you throughout your device and can look at everything else that you're doing, essentially.
Now, this is so. Let me read here really quick. Their Facebook is claiming, we look forward to continue to work with them in the industry on privacy enhancing tech through industry groups. Like they're claiming that, they're looking forward to these changes, but this is really how Facebook makes money. Like I'm kind of curious why, they're targeting certain groups, because they're taking an advantage of the Android platform and its openness. And they were taking, of openness of some of the Apple platform as well, which usually wasn't as open, because if they could get you to install the messaging app on your phone or the Facebook app, it just seems like they were listening, using your microphone. We'd have times where we'd say something and then it'd start advertising. Over on Facebook.
Yeah, 100%.
That is overstepping the bounds. There was nowhere I saw in my license agreement or my agreement accepting that app where it said that they could be using it when I'm not using the phone and listening to everything. And I think they've really cut back and started using per app permissions and making it more clear when you're letting them do certain things, whether or not it can run when, because that's a new thing of Android, is being able to run it when, or use for instance, location or something when the device or the app isn't open versus, it's in the background versus it's up front. Those things are all changing. So I think with this, I'm interested to see how is it going to affect what Facebook offers or Meta offers. Are they going to be really pushing mobile? Are they going to be changing how they advertise? Because there's a lot of different companies that are making money off of your information. It's not just advertising that some of these apps are making money on you for. They're making money because they're selling where you're at. They're selling, just various information that they can get from your device. They make money off of that too.
That's no different than Google. It's an ad marketplace. The reason the search engine is free,
but
so
Google wants to be the one that you do it for. Google doesn't like competition. So it seems like it's more of a, hey, we don't want you doing what we do. We're going to limit it, which Google has always done with their phones. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah. I caught that story earlier this week. I actually think I heard it on the radio. And I thought it was rather interesting to hear.
All right. So, do you want to cover one more thing here really quick?
Sure. What you got?
Or how are you on time? All right.
No,
let's talk about Kickstarter really quick.
Sure.
Because that's something that we used to follow pretty heavily. I saw a report that said that Kickstarter actually has more games. Like this was their biggest year, which I did not expect. Yes. So 2021 was their biggest year. So let me give you some numbers. Actually, pull up that link where it's on the medium.com. And if you go down to the video games and Kickstarter section, no, those are tabletop games. Go down farther because they're throwing in tabletop games are doing awesome.
Are we looking at the number of funded projects?
Do number of funded projects video games? Yes.
Okay.
Now look at that. 441 funded projects for 2021. So that's their highest they've ever had. Really see in 2013, that's when Kickstarting just really hit close to its peak, right? 2012 it started. But now we're not that much above where we were in 2014, and last year. But go down to the next one. Go to the money raised. Okay, remember this graph? Okay, wait a minute here. So in those years, we were making a lot more money. 2012, 2013. 2013, they made 56 million. Now we're doing more numbers now, but look, they're making 24 million. People aren't pledging as much. People aren't asking as much. People are asking more realistic dollar amounts.
That was going to be my point.
They're receiving not craziness. Yes.
Yeah, I think that was going to be my point is that, we had some of these Kickstarters campaigns that had these ridiculous amounts of money that they were looking for, which was just ludicrous. And I think you're seeing a move away from that. That's very interesting to look at these two things side by side, which we can do kind of right here. Looking at these.
And you can see, so really, sure, they have more funded projects, but overall, Kickstarter's making a lot less money.
Yeah.
Because they're dealing with a lot of smaller transactions, so they're having a lot more fees. There's just a lot of overhead with this new business model. So we'll see how they actually like it. Go down a little bit. There's another graph a little bit farther down. Right there. Look at the dollar amounts that we're dealing with in Kickstarter ones too. Back in 2012, 2013, look at the number of $500,000 plus projects that they were.
Well, because you could demand it.
You could ask for something that say, I'm going to have a 5. Nowadays, that's minuscule. Hardly anyone is asking for very much money. Most people are asking between $10,000 and $50,000 or less than $10,000. That is the majority. And the number of people that are asking for less than $10,000 is about equal to what in 2012 they were asking for $50,000 and under.
Yeah, and the 10 to 50,000 is expanded to, I believe it's its high. Just looking at the graph, it looks like it's at its highest point that it's ever been at, which seems to be the sweet spot. It probably is the sweet spot, Brian. If we're being honest about it, if you're developing a video game, do you really need to raise $150,000 or $700,000 to build your video game? I don't think so. I don't think you ever needed to raise that kind of. It doesn't cost that much to build a game. I'm sorry, it doesn't. You're not you're not Activision, you're not Blizzard, you're not Rockstar. You're a couple guys working on a game. You don't need $700,000 because, by the way, you won't meet any of your expectations of your user base, which is what we saw.
Well, and I think that exactly that's it. People found that when they were promised a huge game, 99% of the time on Kickstarter, that game was never delivered or was delivered nowhere near expectation or promise. And so I think they found in the $10,000 to $50,000 range, people tend to deliver what they promise, or
Look
at
at
least
this
deliver
chart.
something.
This is money raised, not money projects. Look at how much different that is. Look at in 2012 and 2013, the amount of money some of these games were making.
Yes. And now,
it's remarkable.
Much smaller.
Yeah.
Much smaller.
Huh. Very neat.
So it seems like they're doing better, but are they? I don't know how good Kickstarter is feeling right now because there's a lot of work going out for much smaller returns. Sure, the numbers seem higher, but there's a bunch of small dollar projects, which means for them, much smaller numbers. So they're making it a much smaller profit.
But they make their money on the transaction fees. So it doesn't, I don't think it matters. And obviously they do make it off of the payout as well, but the transaction fees, whether you donate, you do a $10 pledge or a $500 pledge, obviously that fee is connected to the cost of how much you did. But if there's still, it's still the same amount of money, just in lower denominations, they're still collecting presumably the same amount of fees.
Yep.
I'm surprised. I would have thought that Kickstarter would have fallen off the cliffside because of all the bad
That's
PR.
what I thought too, till I saw this article, and I was kind of I was very surprised. I looked down and I was like, okay, I thought that this is probably their worst year yet. Sure, dollar-wise, they're not doing great, but project-wise, people are doing more than ever on Kickstarter. So I think it's finally settling down and finding its niche. Finding what is reasonable, and people are getting reasonable expectations, and people aren't trying to kickstart AAA games. Because when was the last time that it was really popular? It was when we were in a recession. And believe me, I feel like we're in a recession now, right?
We're rapidly heading towards one, no question about it.
And that's when these kind of indie games, because the AAA studios weren't taking the risk and putting out the money to make games as often. Well, I think we're going to get the ones that go out. But if we get to a recession where they feel like people aren't going to be spending the money, they'll start holding back, and maybe Kickstarter will have another day, or another platform that does something very similar will have another day, of people trying to make a bunch of these games. Hopefully there's more standards and people are actually held to provide a certain amount of product or something. There's got to be more, because that's what really killed Kickstarters. No, anything holding them to what they said.
Yeah, Dead Matter. Okay, that's the last thing I kickstarted. Total flop.
Dead Matter, and the game still isn't anything that's really playable. Do you see people playing it? I mean, I have it. I don't play it. I haven't seen anything that seems like a playable game yet. Just pictures and videos.
Yeah. Let's see if it's it's not, Dead Matter's not in for sale yet, so I can't track how many people are playing it. But.
Yeah. And they promised that game how long ago? Remember when they originally said, oh, we're going to have this thing out by November or December, if I remember correctly. And I said at that time, no way. I broke down the timelines, and I said that there's no way that in this amount of time they can get this done. And, if anything, they're going to push it out 6 months. And now they pushed it out years.
Yeah, we're going all the way back to like 2019.
Yeah, it's been years now. So, cool. All right, I think that's it. We've got some other news we'll cover next week. Some other topics that are pretty cool. A lot of things happening with Intel, NVIDIA. Ubisoft has some things that might be changing here pretty soon that we'll be talking about. Possibly hints at a buyout, which okay, I'll say one more thing.
Sure.
You know how there was all these groups really going after Blizzard and just hammering them, these private groups, and
these stupid union groups?
Yes. Ubisoft has an exact similar one going after it right now.
Well, because now they won't be able to. Yeah, they won't be able to go after Activision anymore because Microsoft doesn't care.
I think that they're going to try to erode their value, and then someone's going to purchase them out. We'll see. Maybe Microsoft will be Ubisoft now. So we'll see.
You talk about owning the marketplace. That would pretty much.
I mean, talk about that. They would own the game. There's going to be a point where the government's going to try to step in. Is my concern.
Oh yeah, it absolutely will. The only thing left will be EA, CD Projekt Red, and Rockstar.
Yep.
That'll be it.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
All
So
right.
we will see. Lots of changes, but we'll talk more about that next week. That's a little teaser. We got some interesting things for that. All right. Well, if you want to find me, you can find me at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, and Getter, and hopefully Truth Social here some point soon. I want my blog, biteoftech.com, and go to check out our website, infectionpodcast.com. Go to the upper right-hand side, join our server on Discord, where we it's a way that you can contact us directly. We have a news channel in there. Maybe there's a topic that we've not been covering, or you want to give some extra input, links and things of a topic that we have been discussing. You can do that in the news channel. We got 9 or 10 ARC servers going. A very active community in that if you're interested in getting on one of those, and they're all linked. If you want to watch the show, we got that on Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, and DLive. We have the audio versions on the podcast app for your choice on the lower right-hand side. So the audio-only versions are recorded and then uploaded after the fact. So if you're trying to catch us live, you will need to get on a video version of the podcast. If you want to listen, I encourage you to go to the episode that you're going to be listening to, because we've got links for all the topics, everything that we cover while we're discussing and doing the show. Those are all available for you to follow along and click on as we get to those topics. We've got a video player and audio player all built in, makes it really easy to use. If you want to support us, there's a support tab up top where there's plenty of information of how you can support the show, or infectionpodcast.com/support. Got a lot of different ways. Go and check it out. And thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Brian.
A lot of crazy things happening in the game industry. So it's kind of cool to see some of these things changing.
Yes, there is, and we are your beacon of light in this world of video game news. So, Brian, as always, thanks for everything that you do, and we will catch up with you next Tuesday.
All right, talk to you soon.
All righty, folks. Well, if you want to check out any of my antics, you can visit either of my websites, nickcraig.com for my daily podcast, or nickcraig.net for my social media profiles. As Brian mentioned, if you missed any portion of today's show, you want to check out maybe that article over on Bloomberg, you can head on over to our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.